Greetings, this is Chris Ruby, the Nostalgia Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov short story review. And in this case, I find it kind of interesting. You have the Reagans on the cover here of the Saturday Evening Post from April of 1974. Interesting. So, before they were too famous as president and first lady, so it's kind of neat. They talk about modern marriage, movies, and their life. I regret to report that this poor copy has fallen apart. The cover is completely off, but at least I can show it. It does not mention Asimov nor his story on the cover. It does, however, mention them under articles on the table of contents. So, Benjamin's Dream, Isaac Asimov, page 8. So, now getting to page 8, we just have one piece of artwork. And there's also quite a blurb here. Well, let's just show what we've got here. This is really something fairly large. Okay. As you can see, there's a very large drawing. There he is with a candle, seeing the Earth. And the Earth has a little rocket taking off from Florida. They'll be talking about that. There's also a magnificently large blurb on this side where they've got some letters that were like responses to the previous, or the beginning, I should say, installment of these Benjamin series. Let me read these blurbs straight through because they do not get gathered up into a book. And okay, this is the Post published in the January-February 1974 issue of story, The Dream, by the famous science fiction author Isaac Asimov, which rivaled an Edgar Allan Poe creation in breadth of imagination that far outdid the gloomy Poe and a radiant promise of hope. In it, old Ben Franklin, although light years away from our present time, reappears to question the author as to the powerless emotional state of the nation, his nation, the United States, poised on the edge of a bicentennial anniversary, but so locked in uncertainties that no firm and noble celebration plan seems to have emerged. Not celebrate the founding of this country with the proper glory and thankfulness? Indeed. Franklin therefore proposes that our citizenry get with it immediately and gather on July 4, 1976 at Cape Kennedy to launch a satellite which will beam medical knowledge for health and progress to our entire planet. Since then, mysterious forces have been at work, almost as if old Ben were putting a hand to the helm of a bicentennial course. A chorus of approval rose up from all sides. And here's some letters. One by Richard Henson of Brandon, Mississippi. I found Isaac Asimov's story entitled The Dream to express an ideal which should be coming to all men. The urgent need for all nations to unite against their real enemies, ignorance, hunger, disease, hatred, was beautifully brought to light through the person of Benjamin Franklin in this moving article. It's about time mankind worked towards the common goals of all sane beings. Let's hope this dream materializes before we all disintegrate. Then, as an Evelyn Collins from Honolulu, I, for one, would like to be at the bicentennial celebration, and I know I speak for millions of women. Volunteer women are needed to help get such a birthday party organized, and I think the proposed event would offer a great chance for women's clubs to mobilize their members in a worthwhile and exciting cause. I'll help. And then from a Roswell T. Murray of Portland, Oregon. I have read many of Asimov's books and have enjoyed most of them, being an SF fan, but nothing has moved me quite as much as his story in the current SEP, Saturday Evening Post, The Dream. Here, he shows evidence of peacekeeping on an international scale. It would appear that you should gang up with the UN and take steps to put old Ben's dream to work. I'll be right in there cheering for all of you and helping in any way I could. Then from Jean Deveau of Toronto, Ontario, in Canada, in Isaac Asimov's Dream, Franklin asks whether Canada is part of the United States. No, we are not part of the United States, and although we've had our difficulties in the War of 1812, anybody remember that, we wish to send our heartiest congratulations and support for the bicentennial celebration. I urge as many from the provinces who can, the Prime Minister and leaders, to participate as a show of strength and good feeling for the entire Western Hemisphere. Well, okay, and many, many more in an unparalleled public response as the dream begins to take on the trappings of reality and future promise. Encouraged by this turn of events, host editors called Emmanuel the Tunknakis of the American Satellite Company, who, proving that science has a heart, listened and averred that Franklin's vision was more than a dream, it could happen. We called Anne Armstrong, White House liaison officer for the Bicentennial Commission. Listen to Neil Armstrong? She listened and fed our hope with the comments, a wonderfully imaginative idea. What makes it particularly exciting is that in the past, one could never hope such a dream could come true. Yet in 1976, with the era of brotherhood which exists now, we could make the dream a reality. We called Bill Ruskelshaus at the JDR Third Fund Bicentennial Project. He listened, called back, and who knows? If Benjamin Franklin's dreams and visions of a brighter future for America gives you any ideas on how you'd like your country to celebrate its birthday, won't you write to Benjamin Franklin in care of the Saturday Evening Post? The address given. We assigned Old Ben as secretary to take care of his correspondence from now until the bicentennial, and he'll surely appreciate some action from today's Americans who care. All suggestions will be relayed to Dr. B. Franklin the next time he communicates. So, he communicates. Well, let's talk about that. That's a large blurb, and I can read all that because it did not get gathered up into the book. The book, you wonder. Let's talk about that. The book, as it turns out, is this. I apologize, I neglected to report on this. There we go. I neglected to report on this in the previous installment in which I was discussing the dream. The dream is included in here without the artwork or its initial blurb. It does, however, have some nice artwork, starting with this kind of appearance of Ben Franklin there, and then this is a rocket taking off. The times we have come to. What would Ben think of that? Nice little foreword written by Charles V. Morris. And then another picture. There he is with his candle. Okay. There's a little bit of a lightning. A reference to the lightning rod that was discussed in the previous installment. Now for this installment, and it talks about a great big birthday celebration, like a big birthday cake. Look at that. Happy birthday, 1776 to 1976, USA. I don't know. Flags are kind of interesting. There's the American flag contemporary. There's what looks like the original one, and something that's British. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm understanding that selection of flags there. Then we have a new one. Here's America. I'm not understanding the things here that are showing, but anyway, that now pertains to the current story we're looking at now. And I think there was one other piece of artwork. Maybe not. No, there wasn't. So all of it is a discussion of let's have a medical satellite. It just becomes a storehouse of all medical knowledge, and it'll be in orbit, and it'll relay its information to anybody and everybody. And medical knowledge can be contributed to it from any and every part of the world. No, that didn't happen, but it didn't really need to, because we have all these satellites. They convey information. We're using them even now. If you're watching this in some different part of the world, you're probably watching it through some satellite or two on its way from some server and probably in the United States to some satellite to another satellite, back down to probably another server in or near whatever country you're in, and from there to your screen. So, as you convey this, you could also convey all the medical knowledge that we also have, and there are good medical websites out there that carry lots and lots of medical information and make it very free and readily available to anybody with a fairly simple connection that most people in most parts of the world are now able to have. There's still boondock areas you don't have it, but there's not very many. So, in a way, that dream could be thought of as true. And medical knowledge, well, in those days we were kind of the king of the world. We really were. But in the ages since, more countries have stepped up to the plate. And actually, I think, in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. We should all be able to contribute. And certainly we're able to contribute, and, maybe more or less, But that doesn't matter. The contributions that are helpful, well, they're helpful. So, that's a good thing. So that's the next story. And as far as differences, I didn't observe any for the first story. The second one, there's a little typo that actually appears in the book, which I had to double check and make sure this was right. So the first day of the new year of 1796 is over. At midnight, it'll be January 2, or for it's past midnight now by my time, Ben Franklin's time. So I guess it would have been January 1 for Ben Franklin of it said 1790, which actually is more correct because Benjamin Franklin passed away in April of 1790. However, he was born in 1706. Maybe that's where the 6 came from. I don't know. So the original of the magazine has it as 1790. January 2nd of 1790. For some reason, when it got collected into this book, it becomes 1796. I don't know why. So there's one other small notion here, and he's talking about the ability to transmit information first over wires and cables across the Atlantic, and then over radio, which is like a kind of invisible light. I think if I was going to, he gets into waves and stuff, which I'm sure would just go, Ben Franklin's a smart guy. But when you're going to talk about invisible waves that make a light, yeah. Probably a simpler thing would have been to point him to, you see how you have the colors of a rainbow. Or perhaps you see light pass through a prism and make a similar looking rainbow. Perhaps you've seen that. And he could say, well, I'm familiar with that. How it's red at one end, and orange, and yellow, and green, and blue, and indigo, and violet, and so forth. Well, the colors extend beyond both ends. We just can't see them. And somewhere in all of that, on the side of the red, and going way deep down into that, you have something that is what we call radio. And it allows information to be transmitted electronically, just like shining a light, only it's not light, it's something you won't see. It will pass through everything harmlessly and convey information all the way from Jupiter. And he makes a mention that, as he's writing, there is a probe right at Jupiter. So he makes a passing mention, which, if we're talking late 1973, early 74, sounds like we're talking about Pioneer 10. So Pioneer 11 is not far behind. It could be the other if this was later, but I think it's Pioneer 10. He's not saying it's our second probe or something, and he's not mentioning that it's going to go on to Saturn. So that also kind of sounds like Pioneer 10. So Pioneer 10 made it to Jupiter, I think very, very late 1973. And 11 made it there sometime in 74. And before and much later on, Voyagers 1 and 2 do kind of the same thing. Only number 1 is very similar to Pioneer 11, going to Jupiter and Saturn. And then, of course, we know the Voyager 2 is very famous for doing Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. We've lost communication with both Pioneers. We last heard from Pioneer 10 about 2003, and from Pioneer 11, interestingly, as far back as 1995. We are still, however, barely in communication with both the Voyagers 1 and 2. So, as I give this discussion. So, it's kind of cool to see these little space things, Space exploration is quite a thing. And anyway, But the satellite idea, that didn't work. But like I said, we did have a unified space effort between the Union, between the Americans and the Soviet Russians with the Apollo Soyuz. But I talked about that last time. I don't need to really go into that again. So that's the second part. That's the second part of Benjamin's Dream. Second part of this Benjamin Franklin series titled Benjamin's Dream. Thanks for listening.